The Trump route for international peace and prosperity.
Many tried to find a resolution, including the European Union. The Russians worked very hard on it, never happened. Sleepy Joe Biden tried, but you know what happened there? He tried for probably 12 minutes and didn't work out. And many other countries tried, and they were unsuccessful. But with this accord, we've finally succeeded in making peace.
Donald Trump, sinking the boot into Joe Biden, as he loves to do at the White House, sat between the Azerbaijani and Armenian presidents. Felicity, what's the story?
Yeah, so the leaders of Azerbaijan and Armenia have signed a peace pledge. Emphasis on the word pledge, not deal or agreement, because a lot of critics think there's still quite a lot to do. But ostensibly they have, for the time being, ended the conflict between their two nations. And this is one of the longest running conflicts on the globe. It's been going on between them for absolutely decades. So the Azerbaijani president and the Armenian prime minister, they were in the White House last Friday to sign this pledge, which Trump has called historic. And this week, the actual text of the pledge was released for everyone to pore over and to see what's going to happen next between these two feuding nations.
Yeah, if you could just bring us up to speed briefly, what is the background to this conflict?
It's quite complicated, but basically, Azerbaijan and Armenia have fought over Nagorno-Karabakh, which is an ethnically Armenian enclave in Azerbaijan. They fought in the 1980s and the 1990s. This is a territory that lies in the mountainous South Caucasus region between the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea. There's been frequent clashes. In 2023, Azerbaijan took over this area. There's been casualties on both sides. There's been prisoners of wars, like hundreds of thousands of casualties. It's been a big deal. So it's all over territory.
Julia, Armenia actually had returned some villages to Azerbaijan in 2024. Is it possible that this peace deal would have happened even without Trump?
It is possible, but I think what is almost the most telling about this conflict is not where we are within the relations between the Azeris and the Armenians themselves, but more how this conflict is being seen in the wider geopolitical map. And I think one thing that is at the top of the Trump agenda and part of the people around him in his cabinet is during the Joe Biden years, they saw a retreat of the United States in many important arenas around the world. Notably, during the Joe Biden years, President Xi of China was very, very active in marching ever onwards with its soft power Belt and Road initiative. And there was a lot of focus on expanding Chinese influence in Central Asia and in the South Caucasus, particularly at a time when sea routes were being disrupted by the global supply chain crisis by the Houthis in Yemen, disrupting a lot of global trade. The Chinese have been really working on solidifying relations between the Kazakhs, between Uzbekistan, and between Georgia and Azerbaijan and Armenia. They're trying to widen their sphere of influence. So what do we get when we see Trump 2.0? He wants to broker trade deals. He wants to broker peace deals. He wants to get America back to its sort of geopolitical influence as the number one, global hegemon in all spheres around the world. And I think this is part of it. I think it's also interesting that you've had a lot of high-profile interventions on this. We all remember perhaps Kim Kardashian making her White House appeal on behalf of Armenia. Her father has Armenian roots, and she's very much on that side. But the other thing is the Azerbaijani relationship with Russia and their close ties is another reason for the US to take an interest in this conflict, to perhaps align with Armenia to counter Russian influence. So I think that there are so many sort of tangled threads to look at in this conflict.
Yeah, I mean, call me cynical, perhaps, but one wonders whether Trump could even have found Azerbaijan and Armenia on a map a few weeks ago. I mean, Jamie, is this all part of Trump's kind of unexpected quest to win a Nobel Peace Prize? Is that what's motivating his involvement here?
You didn't used to be so cynical, Arion. What happened?
This podcast has changed me.
Yeah, absolutely. What were those halcyon days of your A-levels? I think it's interesting with Trump and the Peace Prize. I think he obviously, there's lots of stuff that would suggest that it was actually Obama that caused this whole Trump situation upon us by him taking the piss out of him in the White House Correspondents' Dinner that then saw Trump decide to run for presidency.
That's his villain's origin story.
Exactly. It now seems like he's trying to ape Obama once again by going for the Nobel Peace Prize. It's interesting, I think, as you were saying, Arion, particularly in this deal, it is kind of built off the back of efforts from Joe Biden. I think the White House would say that he wasn't obviously able to get it over the line, but a lot of the agreements had already been agreed by the Azeris and the Armenians previous to Trump getting involved. I saw a thing that the White House said that Trump has thus far stopped 6 wars, and he's stopped about an average of about a war a month, referencing the conflict between India and Pakistan, Thailand and Cambodia, the Congo and Rwanda. So he is obviously positioning himself in that way. How it kind of works within the context of America First and the kind of MAGA backing that he's had is an interesting one. He's obviously seen it as a kind of a feather in his cap to be seen to be stopping wars, but at the same time he's obviously pulling out a lot of funding from US aid, which we've talked about on this podcast before, and still professing to put America first. But maybe this is his idea is it aligns with America First because it's showing how America has power in these regions and not Russia or not China.
Yeah, none of this obviously happened in a vacuum. Julia, you mentioned the involvement of China, but also for more than a century, the Kremlin has played a really significant role of both power and peace broker in the Azerbaijan-Armenia conflict. Felicity, does this signify, like this particular moment, does it signify that the US is expanding its influence in the region kind of at the expense of Russia?
Yeah, I certainly think it does. As you were saying, the last agreement between Armenia and Azerbaijan was crafted by Putin. And historically, Moscow has really sought to extend its influence in the region. And even with these peace talks, it has tried to insert its interests. But actually, both sides, both Armenia and Azerbaijan, they abandoned those proposals in favor of an American solution. So yeah, Russia has been really, really sidelined over this. And its response has been cool, to say the least. It's sort of cautiously welcomed peace in the region, but it has warned against foreign interference, which is obviously a dig at the US. So yeah, it's definitely Russia being sidelined. And it's interesting that Armenia and Azerbaijan went to America, and then they have both been sort of singing Trump's praises, and they have both nominated him for the Nobel Peace Prize. So you can definitely see lots of leaders at the moment sort of being sycophants, really, and sort of seeing themselves sucking up to Trump, which you could, argue that there's other things going on there. And then other country in this, which is also quite important to mention, is Iran. So Iran shares a border with both countries, and some of the aspects of the pledge really affects Iran, because the idea is that they're going to open up this corridor, which also affects Turkey. It's opening up a corridor between Azerbaijan and its Nakhchivan exclave. And that sort of runs very, very close to the Iranian border. And Iran is absolutely furious about the idea that there's going to be more American influence. It's a hot potato.
Yeah, Julia, is Iran right to be worried about this?
I think Iran is looking at the wider geopolitical map and also concerned about security on its borders. It does want to have good relations with both neighbours, and there were lots of Iranians who fled over the borders when there was Israeli airstrikes on Iran this summer. And I think something else that's also really interesting is the growing and rather quiet involvement of Turkey. And Turkey, who have been increasingly intervening in conflicts in the region. They sent troops to Syria and gained territory in 2019. They got involved in the Libyan civil war. Turkey's major rival is Russia, which is also involved in has been involved in this conflict. Turkey has thrown its support behind Azerbaijan. The Azeri population there is a Turkish ethnic group. Their languages are extremely close. And so I think the relationship between the Armenians and the Russians is something that is, has occurred to Turkey, that there is an opportunity for them. The proxy nature of this conflict, like so many others, I think in some ways can prove a benefit in that there are more players willing to broker ceasefires and to end cycles of violence. But no player in this that's involved in this is doing this for altruistic reasons.
Yeah, well, the curiosity is that there are so many players in a funny way, and yet it's Trump, Jamie, who's been successful here, where plenty of others have failed. Is he actually a bit of an underappreciated deal maker, even though that's the thing that he likes to talk about himself most of all? But are we underestimating his ability to solve conflicts that have been raging for a long time?
Yeah, it's interesting to use the term underappreciated and Trump, isn't it, in the same sentence? I mean, there's a key things about this that Felicity mentioned at the beginning, which is that it's just a pledge. There needs to be follow through. It does really benefit the US. They've got 99-year development rights over the corridor that has basically solved the issue, that will be governed under Armenian law but operated commercially by a US subleased consortium. So there is obviously money in this, and money is a key facet to everything that Trump seems to want to get involved in. As to the question of the kind of art of the deal, I think while you're talking about global conflicts that he has got involved in, the kind of big elephant, or two elephants in the room, if a room can hold two elephants, the Ukraine and Gaza. And these are two issues that he hasn't yet been able to find a way through and to solve. And I wonder if his focus on all of these other small, potentially less in the news conflicts is a way of trying to distract from the fact that he hasn't solved the two big issues. And potentially, even if he is, I mean, he's privately said that he wants to win the Nobel Prize. If he's unable to solve, the issues in Gaza and the Ukraine, does that leave him in a position where he's unable potentially to win it? He actually said in his book, in The Art of the Deal, he wrote, "I keep a lot of balls in the air because most deals fall out no matter how promising they seem at first." And that kind of numbers game look at the world is maybe how he views it. Okay, so Trump obviously hasn't been successful in all of the deals that he's been involved in negotiating, but is this peace deal likely to hold, Felicity?
It remains to be seen. I mean, there's still a lot, as Jamie was saying, there's still a lot to figure out. And I think one of the things that could prove a problem is that Azerbaijan has said there's further actions that are required to sign the peace agreement. So they've only initialed everything, they haven't actually signed it. And Azerbaijan wants to see an amendment to Armenia's constitution that would eliminate territorial claims against Azerbaijan. I'm not sure Armenia's going to go for that. So there's a lot of kind of the right thing is being said, and that's, that is something within itself, but there is still some way to go. So it remains to be seen, I think.